Well, hello everybody. This is a very special interview series, what I call success stories. So, right that I have been helping many doctors, currently, so far, mostly podiatrists in the United States and some English spoken countries, but mostly US based doctors that I started consulting side of my business, helping colleagues to realize how detrimental our healthcare system is, and then started helping doctors. And this special interview is is a conversation. This is not formal or anything, but conversation interview with my clients that who shine out and came out transformation of their existing practice to much more desirable practice, not only for ourselves as a practice owner, but also their patients who they take care of. So you'll hear why what I'm saying is true. And I have a special guest, Dr. Helene Nguyen. Well, would you like to say hello to our audience? Just a simple introduction first.
Sure, sure. Hello, TJ. It's an honor for me to get invited to your podcast just to share my story. And I think that going through it, sometimes you feel that the point that you're not sure where you're going. But I think that with your coachings and mentoring throughout the process is helpful because you can literally, I have your phone number in my speed dial whenever I would feel stuck. So thank you for that. And it is a great opportunity for me to share the story within your podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure again to meet you and then help you past almost 3 years now. So, Helene, can you share your story about basically you're from Vietnam, right? Originally?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm from originally South Korea, and many of my audience already know my story, but this is more about you, so that I want to hear basically how you came to United States, and then how's your upbringing in the United States.
Yeah. Sure. I'm immigrate to America in 1989. And as a little kid, that I don't really know, we never know what we want to do. And I immigrated, and the first state I landed in is, believe it or not, is in Illinois. And I grew up in Chicago since then. Um, um, there's a brief period of time that I just my parents move around to different area because in Vietnam the climate is a hot weather, and Chicago, Illinois is a pretty brutal with winter time. So
Right.
we briefly stay in California for a while, and then we still move back to Chicago because that's where most of my family are living. Um, One of the inspirations that I why I become a doctor or in medicine at all is inspired by my grandma who passed away during her heart surgery and operating table. And as 12 or 13 years old, just to make sense out of that, it is really difficult for me. My family are in business, no medical background. So for me to try to understand why one person is not be able to make it through the operation is it's very hard for me.
Mhm.
So that is inspired me throughout the whole entire high school year and get into pre-med program in Benedictine University. And that is how I motivate myself to be in the medical field. And I just want to be a doctor. I don't care what kind of specialty it is, because I just want to know more about the entire, the how the body works. Why is one person is need certain conditions to get better? And I think that's more like the curiosity is is like kind of wired in me, and that's why I want to be in medicine. Um, and how I came about to chose podiatry as my specialty uh, was actually after my father found out that he diagnosed us with diabetes, and when we went to the medical doctor, that he need to follow up with a podiatrist, a cardiologist, and an ophthalmologist. So those are the three referral we got from our medical doctors. And I did not know what's podiatry about. I didn't even know there's such a specialty just focused on feet and ankle, lower extremity. And I started looking into that, and that's during the period of deciding which, either go to the MD program, DO program, DPM program, that kind of like, kind of set through. And I went ahead with the podiatry because I did shadow a few podiatrists in town.
Mm-hmm.
They are very happy with what they do, seeing patient in the office. They do surgery if they wanted to, and as female, and at some point I would like to have time for my family. So that is how it's motivate, how it started out with me being in podiatry itself. And during that time, that is the population of with a patient having diabetes is on the rise. So talking
When
about
was this? When was this?
that was on 1997, 1997, 1998, around those years.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
your class of 2000
No, I'm in podiatry. My class, 2003 is my graduating from
graduation
medical school.
2003. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to school, I mean you chose podiatry and then like anything any story you want to share maybe because we have some podiatry students watching or listening this interview and also we have a lot of residents
Mhm.
who's following my work, so I'm just curious if you had anything to share maybe during podiatry school or the residency program that you went through.
Yeah, going through medical school it is definitely is not something that we think that it just agrees. No, it definitely is not. It's really mentally challenge you. It's also physically challenge you because there are weeks that you have 5 or 6 exam. There's no really no sense of procrastinating. If we try to study and try to procrastinate, it's not going to work. I mean, some people will be able to pull through. I mean, but that's not me. I need to prepare, and sometimes I actually feel guilty for falling asleep because if I sleep, I'm not gonna be able to have enough time to study. So, been through that, and I think it's just very stressful. And I think now think back, those stressful moments is actually kind of train us to be dealing with a stressful environment, especially when we deal with a human being, right?
Mhm.
When we're in the operating room, when we see a patient who really need our help and looking for us for guidance. So I think that is like stress is actually from medical school is actually kind of like help us to guide us mentally to
Right.
sustain through the whole entire pressure. Yeah, so I think that's a good thing. And when get to residency, it's actually a different stress, right? The stress of not having enough sleep, the stress of taking calls, and stress of like, round 40 patients in the hospital by yourself and do every single one with bandaging change and stuff, So,
Right.
uh, so those kind of thing that I think that medical school is a stepping stone, and same thing with the residency is build up our endurance and tolerance and just to deal with a stressful situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, until you said that, it feels like so many years ago, a long time ago, almost like a dream. But as you explain what you went through, it kind of made me realize that's so true. How much mental toughening and physical like physical, not only physical but mentally, how medical school and residency program prepares healthcare professionals, physicians and surgeons to be ready in the real life as far as the medicine standpoint. But it is very important so doctors become strong diagnostician and also mentally and physically strong enough to handle, stress of surgery and dealing with complications in different, like many different perspective. I didn't realize that is very important when we are going through the school and residency program. You know, um, at that age and then at that experience level, we don't know what we're doing, right? We just follow the guidance and leaders, school system, hospital system, but you become tough when we come out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
but then go ahead.
and I think another very important point of like being a doctor is be able to prioritize and compartmentalize, what would happen, because if you go from room to room to see patients, right, and if you still hanging on that one concept of the issue from the prior patient, how are you going to focus on the next patient? So and I think that as when we go through the process, we don't see it, but if we look back, we say, okay, how did I get here, and those moments count, just to push through it. And I think that is the important thing. And the detachment too is another thing that I learned throughout my career, that I really attach with my patient.
Yeah.
And after residency, I actually involved with the wound care setting. And as a wound care practitioner, that you see the patient almost every week.
Hmm.
And you develop that rapport and relationship with the patient and have that attachment. They like your family members. And that attachment had to have a limit, or had a boundary at some point, because I did went through the burnout process. I went through the burnout process as be able to, I could not accept that my patient had to lose a limb. I couldn't accept that I'm not be able to help my patient.
Hmm.
So those kind of feeling that you feel as a, that's why you be a doctor, the first way to care, right?
Right.
And when you go through that process, and it's really hard, it's very uncomfortable, you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes you just so ton of focus on that, wake up and just go do what you have to do and come back and try to act normal, but you're not really normal. And I think that's one of the issues right now with physician burnout, because that we so got wired what we're doing, and we cannot say no to our patient.
That's
And and get used with, like, learn to detach it out so that we be there for our family too. I mean, we have to balance work and life, and that is so important, especially for female physician. So, I'm not saying that male physician is not, but it's a every one of us have different pressure to be a doctor and be a family members. So
Yeah, of course. Um, you know, you talk about burnout. That's essentially happened to, that happens to many physicians and surgeons, especially this healthcare system, past 10 years. And again, as you know, and as audience, you guys know, I still see patients 2.5 days a week because I love that part, taking care of patients. But when I, like 10 years ago, when I was seeing, when I was forced to see 30 to 40 patients a day, because now I'm talking about, I'm adding financial aspect of it, guys. So the taking care of patients part, of course, that's essential. And I know, Helene, I know you're ethical. I've been knowing you now for many years, that I know how you want to take care of each patient and do the as best as you can to provide your service. But problem with many doctors with this system is that it's very difficult for us to provide that level of quality service to patients. It's just physically impossible to see 30 to 40 patients a day and expect yourself to provide the best care to patients. And even patients expect, you only, the time wise, like 9 hour 10 hour work a day, you can barely take time with each patient 5 to 10 minutes. And how can we declare ourselves as a specialist, you know, if we can only see them like 5 to 10 minutes per patient? So what happens, that what I call volume-based practice, forced by insurance system here, that it drives the quality of service down, and also financially reimbursement, it's going lower and lower. Again, it's kind of going back to that whole really detrimental cycle, that we are forced to see many patients with very low reimbursement. And insurance pays this service, but insurance does not pay for the other services, and it just adds new stress to surgeons and physicians, to be able to run their private practice, right? So that's the burnout process I went through back in 2012, and I was about to quit podiatry, but then what I found, almost like epiphany, was the minimally invasive foot and ankle surgery. Literally, I was on the verge of changing my career. So I saw the power of minimally invasive surgery, particularly percutaneous foot and ankle surgery. Because nowadays, we're going to talk about this, but nowadays we hear many minimally invasive foot and ankle surgery because of the trend again, right? So we are at the forefront of transitioning from hospital-based to office-based, and more invasive, procedures utilizing a lot of hardware fixation, to minimizing the use of hardware fixation and minimizing the hospitalization. And I saw benefits, the financially, physically, emotionally, for myself as a physician and surgeon, but also I see the benefits of patients. But I'm going to let you share your experience, how you went through those burnout, and then how things get turned around ever since we started working together.
Sure. Yeah, so that is my first burnout, is working very closely with the diabetic population for wound care. And I actually was one of those managing doctor at the wound center. So I get to see the both, I would say, different aspect in medicine, not in private practice setting, is in the hospital-based setting, and be able to deal with the executive and the board member of the hospital. What really they're looking for at the bottom line. And we as the clinicians, we look at about the clinical outcome, and everything is actually is a lot of conflict in my head. And there are times that I just walk up and say, it's like, am I get trained to be a business person, or am I get trained to be a clinician? So, and I went through that moment, and, so the way as I get trained to do taking care of patients, so I'm just going to focus on that. But then what happened is that when anytime it's a meeting happen, and you go through with like, or a meeting with the under conference room with all the board members, they're looking at, what is projections? I mean, how are you going to project who's going to get sick? How are you going to project like how many wound care patients going to show up? So it's kind of a really, at that moment I sat there and I actually walked out very sick from hearing all that kind of like discussions. And I think that my epiphany is just really, that's at that moment right there, that I refuse to be in part of their game. And the game is not just with the insurance itself. The game is with the hospital, the executive level, the upper managements, and they look at the doctors as, kind of like salesperson, or like a worker. And that's something I could not accept. So I can slowly like phase out my positions. I went from full-time to part-time and developed my private practice. And I get to learn that first out of hand as well. I don't have anybody to guide me through. I do not have any mentor to talk to. I have colleagues who've been through stuff, but you know what, just suck it up and do it. And that kind of the mojo for me went through the whole time. So I learned everything from scratch. I started opening my own practice, and developed from 2.5 days a week to 3 days a week to a full-time office. And now we're fully full-time office. Even though we open full-time, I still work only 2.5 days a week. I practice with my husband, so it's kind of like help out us, like balance our work and family's time. And throughout the whole entire private practice setting, and we see how everything coming down from the insurance level. So now I get to see another aspect of in medicine, not just about the CEO, CFO haggling on us. Now the insurance like play game with us every single time, every single procedure. If we are a surgeon, we do procedure. Even we just order MRI, they play game with us. And for me to see that, that is not a good directions, because we actually delay care for the patient because of all this bureaucracies, all those things going on. And the reimbursement is not even any better. It's going down every time. It's kind of like opposite. I think that we were talking about that at one of our talk, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel if we go in the way that we are going. So when I came to you at the first place, I actually just want to hone a new skill for me, that be able to provide a care for the patients and another service to offer to the patient. I don't ever thought about like 3 years ago when I met you, I never thought about opt-out insurance, never thought about, going for like, ask patient or go for the cash model. Really, I did not, because to me at that time, I still very pretty much brainwashed by the whole entire healthcare system.
Yeah, most doctors I talked to and started helping at the beginning stage, that I didn't realize how much most doctors have been brainwashed by this entire system, education system, medical school, hospital. We talked about this earlier. They do train doctors to be doctors, but unfortunately, to survive and thrive in the real world nowadays, without knowing business skills, and that whole economics and dynamics of private practice, is probably impossible. I think I'm pretty confident. Unfortunately, without knowing other skill set, it's very difficult to survive in the private practice model with only doctor skills. And wouldn't you agree? But anyways, I want to talk about that minimally invasive foot and ankle surgery. You came to me to start learning about the techniques, the surgical skill set. Again, that's very important. One big pillar that I believe in as a niche, right? But I mean, I have trained hundreds of doctors in different cadaver labs and my programs, but I realize you have very, very good hands, and a lot of people have different talents. We all, born and develop unique talent and gifts. But I saw, you were a very talented surgeon, good hands. When I saw you at the cadaver lab and different training programs. But then most important thing, I say this all the time, don't tell me but show me, right? We have so many people, not just the healthcare world, but you guys probably agree with what I say. No matter what area we're talking about, could it be golf, could it be chess, could it be anything. If someone's good at anything, they don't have to explain how good they are. It's basically, hey, show me the results, show me the outcome. And when I saw your surgical outcome that you perform, before and after clinical photos and x-rays, that knowing that, the, depth of minimally invasive surgery, it's just amazing just to see. All I needed to see is, okay, some people say, hey, I'm good at minimally invasive foot and ankle surgery. Oh, well, show me the results. And then, when I look at it, I agree, and then, so your case is a pure example of what I believe in the most. Show me the results. So would you? Because some doctors, in our interview, they might be doing some minimally invasive surgery. Some doctors may be thinking about it. Would you say and share your experience about minimally invasive surgery, your experience, and then like the benefits of it to doctors and patients?
Yeah, I really, when I came to you, and I'm sure that a lot of doctors came to you for a reason, right? We want an out, whatever
Mm-hmm.
out of the working environment, out of the bureaucracy of the insurance, out of doing surgery. And I think I would characterize myself as out of doing surgery
Mm.
because I got really tired to deal with low reimbursement, dealing with the hospital or the surgical center, turned down my case booking because it's not uh, profit enough to sign on for the case. So I actually, when I came to you, that I want that out, and that out is I would like to continue to do surgery. I love doing surgery. I enjoy doing surgery. I love to see transformation on my patient feet. Whether is aesthetically, if you call some people they really in the excruciating pain. Some people is actually it's a limb salvage case. Um, but I love doing surgery. And when I saw minimal invasive program that you have, I didn't get the opportunity to join you in the New Orleans conference. But I missed out the part that you actually had the conference in New Orleans or somewhere else. I think that you when you first started your program, and but I
Oh, that
did.
was in Chicago. Yeah.
That's when Chicago, yeah, and I did,
2018.
yeah, I did follow you
Yeah.
or your Zoom meeting or webinar, and it took me a while to make a push for me to move forward and reach out to you for that discovery call.
Well,
And
let me ask you, what was holding you back? I remember it took you like 3 months or so
yeah,
that you were ready to join. Yeah.
yeah, the part that's holding me back is the financial situation that we were in. Um, and that's another aspect of it. So when we be a doctor, we take care of the patient, but then of course we never be we never get trained to be a good business
Mm-hmm.
person to handle business issues.
Right.
So if I was continue to play the insurance game, like you say, the volume game, we don't know how much we're gonna get paid, when we're gonna get paid. We don't know if we cannot communicate to our patient how much they're gonna get on their bill. I mean, and that is very uncertain. Like I put myself as a patient, I do not want to all those uncertainties. And that is actually become a very stressful for me just to talk to the patient, to have them do it. I have a solution to take care. I can do surgery and fix the bunion hematome or whatever procedure. But then when it comes to the financial part, I cannot tell them for sure. And that is really is killing me in that way. So I when I reach out to you, I just want to learn the skill. Okay, so I love learning, and you can't tell that's you see that already. I love learning new things. I love learning new techniques. So I'd be able to provide the care and doing surgery procedure for the patient in my office. That I don't have to rely on the hospital. I don't rely on hardware. I don't rely on the surgical center. And the patient will be able to get a better outcome and follow up with me, less downtime. minimal pain. And those are the things that I was looking for. Um, I saw your, before and after on your one of your free webinar. And I said, wow, how can he do that? And my in my head, I said, from the open surgeons process, like, how the heck did he do that? How can he make that correction? And when I got into your program, then I found out, I mean, it's definitely your first the accelerate course is a very good course. It's so comprehensive. It's made me so comfortable to trust my skill, which we already have the skill set to do surgery. We have the bravery to operate on people already. So it is actually, it's a very smooth transition for me.
Mhm.
And I do love what I'm doing right now. And just like I say, before I came to see you, I really want out of doing surgery. Now I want in doing surgery. So
Right.
it's kind of opposite. Because I see the outcome is there, the result is there, it's proven. It's not something that we do something bad for our patient. All my patients so happy after the procedure, and I think that is one of the very satisfying as a doctor, to hear the patients saying that, well, something that we don't even know that they struggle with during their, during their regular activities. They could not even find the shoes to wear. For us, something is like, what? Just find shoes. And some people, they suffer with the foot problem and not be able to wear shoes, the right shoes that they want for
Right.
10 or 20 years. And that's how, to me, to us, like normal, we're like, wow, that is just probably shoes, but to some people, that's very important.
Yeah. Nowadays minimally invasive surgery is kind of hot issue. Like you can see, you know, doctors talk about minimally invasive surgery and more like everywhere, right? Every different magazines and articles, it's popping out almost every month. But some doctors, again, maybe we need to educate. Some doctors, a few, I should say, few doctors think that MIS, especially percutaneous foot surgeries, are not evidence based. And you and I and our group, we kind of laugh at that, because how I'm gonna say a strong word, how ignorant it can be that MIS, the few people believe that it is not evidence based. But most, again, like what you just said, is so true. Most surgeons, I was traditionally trained open surgeon, typical surgical residency, and I was practicing traditional surgeries for 11 years before I found out about MIS. But until few years after I've been performing MIS, I didn't I didn't focus as much as far as a patient's satisfaction, right? Emotionally and the recovery process, their activity, after the surgery. Because at the time, before I knew about MIS, I was more traditional surgeon. Hey, I fixed this problem and I'm done. I'm gonna still follow up what I learned from the my program and my training, but let's face it, have we really, gone to that patient's psychology level, right? The deep down satisfaction level, the recovery process. But MIS kind of, makes you think in that direction because the post-op dressing, post-op splinting is so important. And then you actually feel like, go through patient's experience a lot more closer. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. I do agree on that. And actually, patient be able to share, a lot more than what we would normally be doing on open surgery.
Yeah, and then do all these different testimonials that, obviously that's a marketing aspect. Maybe we're gonna talk about that in the part two. But
Mhm.
as a private practice owner, you need not only your surgical skill, but you need to have developed business skills such as communication, how to talk about, money aspect with your patients properly, but then also, once you set those two systems, you need a marketing system in place in order to generate consistent qualified patient prospects to your practice so that you have a consistent flow of patient prospects that you can help more people. Now, again, going back to the subject, what would you say to doctors who are not sure about minimally invasive surgery, or if they're not evidence based or not, that wrong ideas about minimally invasive surgery? uh, you being at the first hand, surgeon who went through transformation just like I did, what would you say and share with people who are listening or viewing this interview?
Yeah, the especially the length of us being doing open surgery is longer than how we adapt, because just like how much we get brainwashed by insurance, right? So we also get brainwashed and not open-minded to all new techniques. And for me, I think I'm blessed with like being very open-minded with what I do. So at the beginning, I don't really truly believe in what MIS can do until I actually see within myself and I did my first case. Was that shaky? Yeah, it was shaky. It was sensitive to me when seeing that from the X-ray level is so much different.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something just from the belief and the trust that the protocol and the evidence base is there. There's our articles, there are proven techniques. There's a whole book about it, many books about minimal invasive surgery. So this is not something brand new. And that is something is for me, I gear toward that belief and just focus. I don't really doubting what open surgery would do. I mean, there are cases we need to do open surgery.
Sure.
So that's a good thing. So that's a good thing for us to be trained in open surgery and now do an MIS, because we're not afraid. We're not afraid that if we had to open that joint up and do something different than MIS can do. And I think that's a leverage that we should take as an open surgeon and now trained to do MIS. The MIS technique that I was looking for, which is what something that you always teach and preach about, was what Dr. Isham and so many masters out there doing, is without fixation. And that is something that is such a new concept for the patient as well, not just for the doctors, and if we be able to provide them the solution, correct the deformity without using hardware. And I think that's going to be happy for the doctors, that they don't feel like, oh, what if some hardware broke and God forbid something, we need to taking it out. All the hardware right now, that's, I looked at it, it's like, how the heck am I going to take it out if something's not work out for the patient? And I feel very comfortable with the way that I'm doing right now with corrections of my foot deformities with like minimal invasive surgery, the traditional way, the real core practice and minimal invasive, because the patient is like, you know what? So what? It does no hardware. We can always do it again, or we can do some touch up. And the patient's open to that. They don't have to go through the sedation process. They don't have to afraid that, they had to hold off a certain medications. I do have the protocols for my minimal invasive surgery patient, and I've been educating on the doctors around the area. That is something that's available. And I think that the community, not just podiatry community, but also medical community, MDs, DSOs, and all the specialists around the area, they need to know about minimal invasive surgery, because that's something that it will be so beneficial for the patient. It's a solution that I be able to operate on the 94 years old. That's my oldest patient for bunion that she been suffered for 30 years, because her cardiologist said there's no way she's going to be a candidate for sedation. Her medical doctor said, you're not going to heal because of your skin conditions. It's not going to heal. There's no way that the hardware going to take if you need to correct your bunion or hematose. So I'd be able to, operate on the people who older than 55, which is at the prime age for the open surgery, right? But now we can do so much more. It's a wire, wider range of population that we can help. And patients, they're doing great. I have got, knock on wood, that everybody's happy right now. So we keep it that way. And I think, as being a doctor, you want to do what you can for your patient. I don't want to say, sorry, Mr. Smith, you are too old to have surgery, or I cannot operate your foot because of your heart conditions. So that kind of thing is to us as a doctor, then what's the point of we be a doctor, right? There's no solution. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up again on many good points, but we are here to say not one school of surgical skills better than the other, right? It's
Mhm.
alternative surgical skills so that we open door to patients for wider selection that most traditionally trained surgeons didn't think of before. So why not looking at minimally invasive surgery, pure percutaneous MIS procedures as an alternative? And that's what, my mentor, again, you mentioned his name, Dr. Stephen Isham, that's what he wanted. Why not we learn, different skill sets as an alternative, and ultimately it's surgeon's discretion. He always says that, ultimately it's what surgeon feels the best for patient's procedure and their own surgical skill level, etc. But we're not talking which one is superior. We need to I'd like to expose you to the whole new world of surgical skill set that most surgeons have not been trained, and then you make the choice, you make the decision, and then you can help more patients, and then you will see the results and outcome, of course, with the proper training and protocols. That's what you need, because again, most the foot surgeons are not familiar still. It's on the way. I started teaching residents, you started helping some people too. The podiatry school now, they're accepting and welcoming the idea of minimally invasive surgery, and I've been teaching podiatry school students at Show where I graduated, the introducing the MIS. So it is coming. So I think because it's a big transition, right? The healthcare system changes, insurance system, that doctors are struggling, patients are struggling because they get denied for their treatments at different places. So again, if you're on the fence about minimally invasive surgery, please do not wear sunglasses. Do not wear with your own mind that you may not realize what kind of world is out there on the other side, right? So until you put yourself in there, do not prejudge, like what minimally invasive surgery can do, or, is it evidence based? Yes, there are hundreds of, medical articles published about very specific procedures you and I do every week, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. We see not just podiatry, is our orthopedics start doing minimally invasive with non-fixations, hardware fixations, so we do see that. And I have so many questions when a patient comes in, like, is this a new techniques? Because as I know, it's very like traditional techniques in internal orthopedics work. It's just that it's never brought up and come to fruition because our healthcare system is so heavily affected by the pharmaceutical hardware company. So we kind of like, we're forced to use, fixation with hardware in order to do whatever we do. But this is a very traditional way to correct and let the body heal the way it is. And I think patient just, great, sign me up, so that kind of mentality. And I think educations is very the key for the patients, learning how to talk. So which is your program, be able to kind of guide us as the doctor talking to the patient at their personal level to address the need. Is more than that, okay, you come to see us as a doctor, this is what we can do. I think that tactic is no longer work nowadays. And I think in the medical system that what we train to do again, we listen to the patient. If we not listen to the patient, how can we help the patients?
Yeah. So, past next 5 minutes, I want you to share. Now, you said earlier you were kind of almost yourself got sick seeing business aspect of medicine from hospital executive, but now that you're in a private practice owner, you're transforming to hybrid concierge model that I preach and I practice, and now you're practicing. Tell me, would you see yourself now as only surgeon, or you now think about the business side?
I actually a little of both because I'm still in the transitions. I'm not fully concierge. I still need to do more marketing because I believe that, like you say, marketing is a key. We have so much more educations to information to put out there to the medical community, to the public. And I see myself as half and half now. All
Good.
right. And I be able to actually not stress out so much because stress out so much in terms of getting the patient approved for a procedure, because those communications are taking place in the exam room. Right now, I'm no longer participate with a lot of insurance that gave us such a hard time about authorization, about deductible, high deductible. So I'd be able to communication with the patients like in the first hand, say, hey, listen, this is your deductible. This is how much we're looking at. And we know what for sure, what's gonna cover, what's not. So it's a very transparent, to talk about fee with the patient and get the acceptance, and also the communication with the patient about the procedure we're gonna do is the key too, because that is a valuable information for the patient to choose which direction. Again, they still have any right to make the decision what they're gonna do for their future, right? The financial part is the key to continue to keep that cash flow through the transition. And that is another thing that we have to learn. It's like everything that we do from the day one when we start medical school to now, we're constantly learning because medicine is constantly changing. The regulation, the policy, but at least if you want to deal with the insurance, that one is off the equation. So right now we just focus on taking care of the patient.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you now, what you shared with us, that I remember vividly very first conversation when I met you first time, 2.5, 3 years ago. Now I see you as very successful, confident surgeon, but not only surgeon, but private practice owner. And you had guts to transform your practice from that traditional bureaucracy based, insurance based, volume based model to more quality based, hybrid concierge. And then you focus on patient's care, without losing the profits and revenue of your practice. Not only that, also your lifestyle. I'm very big, that I'm very big on creating lifestyle you want to live with for rest of our lives. Then you can create your private practice around that lifestyle of your choice. But existing model and brainwashed model, it was getting more difficult and more difficult to do that. But now I see, in social media, you enjoy your family time with your beautiful son, your husband, you go outdoor to fishing and hiking and camps. I mean, traditional model, 40 to 50 patients a day, 5 days a week. It's impossible to deal with EHR, MACRA, MIPS. Now you don't really have to handle like that much of workload. So to finalize our interview of these success stories, what would you say your kind of final suggestion or advice to people who might be watching this?
Well, I would say that, if we are, whether that where you at in your career, for me, I've been in practice for 15 years, going on 16 years. Things always changing. I would say that one of the advices, if you really love what you do, just be open-minded, because you will find that unicorn to make you feel better about yourself as a doctor, feel better about yourself, about being a member of your family, and a successful leader in your practice. Because if we let all those like stressful situations keep like occupying our head, then we not ourselves. We're not going to be there for anybody around us. So, and the most is our family first, right? Our patients and our staff. So everybody looking for us. So we need to be open-minded and just see what's out there and let's try it. And I think I said a lot to most of my staff is like, whatever you think, just do it. Don't hesitate, because you may miss the boat.
Yeah. Oh, that's very true. I mean, it's been so pleasure talking with you. I can talk this with you for hours. You and I, we think very similarly. Doctors or healthcare professionals who might be watching or listening to this interview, a couple of words that stick right now that stand out. Have open-minded. Dr. Helene Nguyen says, have open-minded, and then just do it. I love that. It's like a slogan, right? But take action. Have open-minded. We live one life in this earth at this moment, and I don't want any of you to reach to the end of our career or life and then saying to ourselves, oh, I should have done this, I shouldn't have done that. That regret, that's something that I strive my life to live. How can I live my life every day, every moment, so that we have minimum regret, right? So have open-minded. Thank you so much for joining this interview, Helene.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you guys want to follow my work, interview, webinars, please follow by simply the channel, podcast or YouTube channel or Facebook, Instagram. You guys know most of them are my handles, DRTJAHN. And if someone wants to reach out to Helene, again, I'm gonna put her contact information. Is that okay, Helene?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm gonna put her contact information in the show notes below this video or podcast. So you guys, please do not stop learning, and improving yourself and live the full life that we have, that this precious life we have. Thank you so much, Helene.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.